Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. I'm Amy Shannon, but you can call me Amy. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome, and I hope all is well with you. I'm Amy, and today I'm talking about Talia Haven's books. Today's books are Krim by Talia Haven and The Good Mystic by Talia Haven. The reason why I'm going to discuss two books today, because these are short stories, and I wanted to make sure that, this wasn't just a 2-second podcast. Anyways, I've been reading Talia Haven's books since I think it was the earliest was 2016. I could be incorrect, but so some of the books of Talia's I have read, and then there's a bunch of books that I have to read, and those will also be discussed on future shows. So the first, we're going to discuss the first book called Krim, and I hope I am pronouncing that right. I did write a review for it a very long time ago, and back to when I was starting writing reviews. The first couple years, my reviews were short and sweet, and I was kind of listening to or figuring out how best to write a review. So I just really talked about the story itself. Over the years, I learned that it's not just about the story, it's about the characters, it's about the author's writing style, how it fits, how it may not fit. Some stories are written in a way that they don't really seem to fit in with the genre of the characters, and other times they fit in. It's perfect. It comes out of the author's mind to the page, however they do their writing. So The Krim by Talia Haven, and it's a very short book description. It says, Krim soon discovers what lies behind a stone wall. Yes, this is a very short read. It's about 7 pages. So I'm going to start off with this one. And even though it's like 7 pages, um, I'm just going to read the first 2 paragraphs, and hopefully you will look up work by Talia Haven. She has Amazon profile, so if you search Talia, Talia Haven, you'll be able to find her Amazon page and all of her work that she has on there. Much of them are short stories, they're short reads, but it takes a lot of talent to put a lot of information, a whole story, in just a few amount of words. Writing short stories is not as easy as you would think because they're short. Is because you got to make sure you have all stories need a beginning, middle, and an end, even if it's a cliffhanger or it's carrying over to another story. Some people will take a full-length novel and then also divide it into novellas, and then people can read it in sections or they can read it as a whole. And I find that that's very interesting. That's something that I haven't done, but I have seen authors do it, and it actually works. So without further ado, I'm going to get back to what I was talking about with Talia. So this is Krim. Krim was just a colt when the stallions of the Dusha herd led him and the mares to the stone building with its tall walls and heavy wooden door. The structure and its inhabitants weren't much of interest to either Krim or Mares. Every morning, the entrance creaked open and allowed the occupants to go about their daily task of gathering firewood and tending livestock. Then, just before dusk, everyone and everything would retreat inside. The door would groan closed until dawn, and when it would reopen and another day repeated itself. Now, this dull situation may not have appealed to Krim or to the mares, but the stallions were fascinated. They lingered, hidden from sight in the shadows of the dense woods, eager for another day of monotonous activity. At night, while the rest of the herd slept, the stallions remained vigilant, worried that they'd miss any movement that might come from the torch-lit stronghold. So I'm going to leave that story there. It should be, it piqued your, I'm hoping that it piqued your interest. When I wrote the review several years ago, and I gave it 5 stars under the genre short stories and folk tales, and called it a grand story. It takes a special writing skill to create a short story. Krim is a grand short story where the story doesn't take over, it tells the story. The meadow filled with mares, fillies, and unicorns, a time where unicorns frolicked. It's a wonderful fable and it tells the story with ease and has a thoughtful ending. It's nice to know that fables and fantasies can still exist. A well-written short story. So that one is pretty much about that one. What I like about Talia's writing is that she can write so many different genres within the short story and also be able to tell them in ways that are powerful, detailed, and they aren't really lacking any part of the story. Like when you read it, you're not thinking, oh, feels like something's missing. Because sometimes that happens. There's a piece, when you think the author should have put in there, or you're not quite sure because something doesn't make sense. But when I've read Talia's work, I don't find that in her short stories. Her next short story that I want to discuss is called The Good Mystic by Talia Haven. And it is another simple book description. When Cora's daughter is murdered by the edge of the river, she begins her hunt for the killer and the person who ordered it. So, again, a very short story, but it is a little bit longer than the Krim du Chat. And this one was written in 2018. Again, if you want to find more about Talia Haven, you can go to her Amazon page. You can she has a Facebook page, she has a Goodreads author page. So you'll be able to find her work pretty simply. And there are other books and future episodes of the podcast that I will discuss. Sometimes there'll be 2 books, and sometimes it might just be 1 book, depending on how long or short the story is. But I believe that this woman's work should be read and shared with others. Some people like a good short story, and I like that too, It doesn't have to be 500 pages to get your story across. Not that I'm condoning anything about 500 pages, because I have read books that long and they do take a while, but they are also worth the read. So it's not about the length, it's about the content. And that's what I believe in, and the writer's passion, because you can read something and know or almost feel the passion the author had put into their story. The other ingredient for a good story, and I had mentioned, introduction, middle, and end, but also the author's passion and their skill for showing a story. Anyone can tell a story, but showing it with words and it gives you that imagination. That's something that it's a talent that many writers have that I've seen. And I have been exposed to so many authors, probably more than your average reviewer, but I've been reading since I could, since I learned how to read when I was 4. Anyway, so moving on to The Good Mystic. Um, The Good Mystic by Talia Haven. I'm going to read a few paragraphs and hopefully it'll pique your interest. Cora, you know that half mortal cannot exist in the God world, Brigitte insisted, and I apologize if I am not pronouncing some of the words properly. Any more than you can stay for years in theirs. I know, Cora sighed and moved her hands to rest protectively on her still flat stomach. Brigid knew that Cora was not far along and wondered who the mortal man was. Cora, with her white hair, green eyes, willowy and tall figure, was a real seductress when it came to human men. But Cora, as far as Brigid knew, had never gotten herself in this situation before. I will have to expose it and hope that someone will find it, Cora continued casually. Bridget had regarded Cora with concern, but now stiffened when she heard those words. She had expected, as the goddess of fertility, Bridget was always worried when children were left exposed. Uneasily, she handed over a smooth wooden goblet filled with a brim with warm milk. I might as well let her know now, Bridget thought, before she drinks. Don't drink it yet. She gestured to the cup in Cora's hand and then blurted out. I went to the island on Lake Pequod. You went and saw Ceridwen? Shocked, she held the wooden goblet clenched between her hands. Cora gaped at her friend. The Welsh goddess thought, why had Bridget gone all that way? So I'm going to leave you with that, and hopefully that has enticed you to want to read her story. When I wrote the review back in 2018, I gave it 4 stars and called it powerful. It took me a minute not to grasp not only the concept and characters, but I did. I was drawn in immediately and learned about the mystics and their carefully chosen words when given to those who asked about their future. Cora is the mystic, the goddess of prophecy, sometimes in a grand crane form, loses her daughter and she sets out for revenge. The story is short, but it's a great read and has an intriguing depth. Cora is guided by her mother's words, but if you only tell them good things, then they will feel better about their lives, and so will you. A powerful story told in a magical and mystical way. So, just to recap, I have read the Krim and The Good Mystic by Talia Haven, and I am so happy that I got to read it. And if you're an author who wants your book to be on the show, go to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews/podcast for more information. If you want your book to be reviewed, you do have to be a legacy author, but you can also be referred by another author or go through a process of doing a special request, and you can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com and get more information on that. So thank you, and I'll talk to you next week. This has been Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Thank you for listening. And always, be kind and stay safe. Thank you.